As we know, we've had a considerable period of market volatility in the States over the past couple of months, with a sharp rally from a fairly tumultuous end of December. Two big issues here. Firstly, the direction of the China-US trade talks, and we've got a high-level delegation coming back to Washington for talks at the end of the week. We know for a fact that trade talks are always very, very difficult to resolve completely, but what's important here in terms of markets is the direction of travel of the negotiations, and they do seem to be heading in a positive direction in that sense. Our guess is that the Chinese will make a number of concessions to the Americans on a number of fronts. That will stave off a further increase in tariffs, which originally was planned for the 1st of March. That could be delayed by 60 days. And we would hope to see some progress on the tariffs which were implemented by the administration over the course of last year being reversed as well. So fairly positive there. We'll look at the mood music. A second factor which has supported global markets is interest rates, and with Jerome Powell and perhaps the rest of the FOMC saying that they would be patient in terms of further interest rate rises. And if you look at the current shape of the yield curve, it's actually looking at a small chance of a cut over 2019. We'll find out a bit more about the FOMC's deliberations with the forthcoming minutes from last month's meeting, and we get Jerome Powell speaking to Congress next week as well, which will yield further clues. We're currently recalibrating our interest rate view. We've thought for some time that we'd see perhaps 2 increases in rates over 2019, followed by a long pause. We still think that interest rates will go up. There is still considerable momentum behind the US economy. The labour market continues to tighten. Against that, we've had some weak signs from the housing market. We're unsure about the most recent retail sales numbers as well, although that could be a bit of a blip. Of course, we have to filter any economic information out for special factors such as the government shutdown, and that's when we eventually get the economic numbers which have been delayed as well. So it's a slightly complicated picture, but it does spell out to us that the Fed isn't going to do anything soon. Perhaps we'll get 1 rather than 2 hikes over the course of this calendar year, followed by a pause and perhaps a cut in rates in 2021, perhaps even 2020. We'll see. Turning to the UK, obviously Brexit continues to be the main item in the headlines. Our view very broadly here is that the Prime Minister is trying to run the clock down, and she's trying to do that, number one, because EU negotiations tend to run to the last minute in any case. Also, faced with fewer options, parliamentarians are more likely to back a version of her deal. And then that means that she will not have to either go into a no-deal Brexit, which would be very negative for the UK and the European economies, or delay Brexit as well beyond the 29th of March. But I think we'll see a few market jitters before that point comes, and we do have a meaningful vote due in the House of Commons next week. But in the past, that vote has been pulled, so there's a chance that it might not happen. The last point is that politically, we had 7 Labour MPs resign from the Labour Party at the beginning of this week to sit in a new independent grouping. It's not a formal political party, or at least yet. Will this change the face of British politics? Well, I've got to say I'm a bit sceptical about that. We had a big split in the Labour Party in the early 1980s. It took a lot of time, arguably a couple of decades, for there to be a proper shift in the political groupings in Britain. I'd be a little bit surprised if there was an immediate effect on representation in the Commons, though it may well be that if the independent group becomes a more centrist party and stands in elections, that could have an impact on the dynamics in terms of splitting the Labour vote, and that could actually end up helping the Conservatives in any election.